Hi everyone, welcome back to this channel. I already produce Mondays and Thursdays, but because I'm out and about, I think God would sometimes just allow you to go outside of your comfort zone. Apparently our water is shut down for 1,000 times already. I don't know what's going on in our apartment. And then this is not a rant video because I don't want you to think that I'm such a Debbie Downer and a complainer, but my life is never perfect. Whatever I tell you in front of my camera or my video, it's all about positivity, optimism, looking at things with a different perspective in mind. But today is just one of those days. Okay, so other than that, I have this thought apparently for quite some time now. Which one is it that you are the real you and not the real you? Which one is the right way and not the right way? On this channel, I've always talked about authenticity, being real of who you are. And I have this theory in my head. Which one is real? Is it the one that I was when I was a little girl? The rules and the traditions that was passed and handed over me by my ancestors, or my parents, grandmothers, grandfathers, mom and dad? Or is it now, whatever you see? Is this really me? So I've been really have this puzzle that I'm trying to solve. Because if you get into my age, of course, we as a person, we must evolve. We must constantly change. But at the same time, we cannot lose sight of our innately God-given talents and skills. So this is why I'm always thinking to myself, when I was a teenager, I've dabbled into things of this world, especially when you migrate from a different country. If you don't know me, I was born in the Philippines and we're very traditional. And the values that was embedded upon me as a child was always about God first, because I was brought up in a Catholic, very religious family members who really loved God. Like my grandfather was a man who really wants to see you at church. He wants you to get involved in altar boys, altar girls, in the choir. He was the president. On top of that, my grandmother was a very prayerful grandmother. She was always prayerful her rosary. And then when I migrated here, just to give you a backstory of my life, at the age of 16, when I came here in this country, the United States of America, that is when I started, of course, as a teenager. We dabbled into the worldly things. We dabbled into becoming liberal. We like to try different things. We like to experiment with our likes and our whatever we prefer, to be cool and to be accepted. Because actually, as a teenager, at that point, you don't even know who you really are. You're not really sure of, is this what I like? Is this who I really want to become? So we get too confused, and that's why if you are not careful, the world is going to taint you of that ideology. And the world and the media, especially right now for being a teenager, we have a lot of influences, social media, actresses, actors, musicians. And this is why sometimes you wonder to yourself, who am I really? Who is the real me? The girl that I was before, or the girl that I am now, or the woman that I am today? So these are the things that if you don't really know who you are, where do you even start? Because I know you said you probably would ask yourself the question, you talk about authenticity, but how can you find the authenticity? How do you really know that's who you really are? It's easier to say that be authentic, be genuine. A lot of people have been throwing that word lately. It's been a buzzword, but how do you find being authentic? Who is the real you? The one before, as I said, or is it the one that you are now? And I look back in my own life and the things that was given to me by my grandparents, I still hold dear until to this day that I'm in my 40s right now. These were the lessons that for some reason I could never shake out of it. It doesn't matter. I tried to become liberal. I tried to become rebellious as a teenager, not to a point of doing something bad. I was just trying to recreate myself into becoming this liberal teenager, like dressing up a certain way to attract a different person. But I was brought up very conservative. I was brought up very traditional, where we're not allowed to expose our skin, or not allowed to really just show your cleavage. That was the kind of upbringing I had. But then when you move into this country, and I was also a person who never cursed, but when I moved into this country, you were exposed to this surroundings, you're exposed to many influences, the way that, you know, teenagers dress up and you try to be like them. And I also hang out with the wrong crowd where they love to listen to certain music that has a lot of profanity, a lot of cuss words. And on top of that, you somehow get lost in the mix of, wait a minute, who am I really? Is it me before or now? So this is why at the age of 40, I'm trying to get back and get in touch with the roots where I come from. I know some people would say being traditional is very boring. It's mundane. It has a lot of rules and restrictions that you can't really do this, you can't do that. As I would always tell on my channel, you must live your life. You must be a teenager. You have to live your life according to what feels you good in the moment. You have to really experiment, as long as you're not hurting people along the way, you're not violating laws, you are not really doing things, because I did that. I went clubbing, I also fornicated, which is actually later on in life when I became a Christian, I realized fornication is sleeping around before you get married. That's a sin, actually, that's talks in the Bible. But of course, I did not know anything about the Bible, even though I grew up in a very Catholic religious people, but I did not read the Bible and I did not understand the Bible, because as a teenager, we think that we know everything. We think as a teenager we're invincible. We think that the rules doesn't apply to us. But eventually, you're going to reap the consequences of the choices that you have made. And I wish somebody would have told me this before, because now I am reaping the consequences of some bad decisions that I have made in my past life when I was a teenager, and I'm also reaping the good consequences of the things that I've done right. So that's why I'm telling you, based on my experience, that if you're still young right now and you're still a teenager, maybe this is specifically for the youngsters message, that if God is small enough to be understood, then he will not be big enough to be worshipped, according to Evelyn Underhill. Because I thought that God was very small before. I thought God was someone that I can put in a box when I don't need him, and I take him out in the box when I need him. So I thought religious people before was just pretending, or they just do things because it's for the sake of, I don't know, maybe they were bored. And so when you're a teenager and nobody really explained to you why you need to go to church, or why do you have to pray a rosary, because nobody really taken the time, because I'm a person who likes to have explanation. I guess I'm kind of one of those kids. I always ask why. Like the same thing with my son. Why is this? How this is functioning? And sometimes now it drives me crazy when my son asks me all these questions. Why, mom? Why this? But now I am the same way. I'm just like the same person who likes to understand things better. But if nobody in your family explains to you the right way of why we must go to church, or why should we pray, then you just follow rules that doesn't make sense to you, because as a child you just don't understand how the world works. But when you become an adult, according to 1 Corinthians, when you were a child, you talk like a child, you reason like a child, you think like a child. But when you become an adult, hopefully those childish things you will put aside and you become an adult in your head. But because if nobody took the time to explain to you why must you go to church, why must you pray, then of course you just think that you're doing this out of obligation. Because none of us, as I have learned, that when it's obligation, when it's being forced, and when it's not being explained thoroughly of why you must do certain things, you're going to end up rebelling against it, because we are rebellious people. It's in our nature to rebel against the nature of God. So let me just turn on these things. So this is why we must be careful to do things of this world, especially when you become a teenager and you think that you know better. So to humbly say that I'm actually trying to get back to the roots, which is being Catholic. I converted to Christianity, and I know I talk about I submerged, I got baptism. I'm not saying that, you should do what I do, but it's up to you, because every one of us have a different journey. I cannot tell you where you're at in God's journey right now. I cannot tell you to convert back to Catholicism. I am still in this journey of trying to make sense of it all. Christianity, as I said, it's not really about the religion. It's not about affiliated to a certain congregation or affiliated to a certain denomination. For me, when you say Christian, it is about having a relationship with Jesus Christ. It is about being his disciple. It doesn't matter if you belong to Baptist, Methodist, I don't know, whatever religion, because I have really been lost lately. I don't know which church I should belong to and which congregation should I belong to, because when I was in Pennsylvania, I was in this church. They're very welcoming. That's when exactly I converted to Christianity. But now that I moved to a different state, it's very hard for me to find the real church that is very genuine. I ended up being in a cultish, it's not really the church that I felt like God is there. I feel like it's becoming more a business more than living for God, really. And when I revisited the Catholic, there was some kind of a familiarity. There was some kind of a nostalgic experiences that I had when I was a child. It brought a lot of memories of what it feels like to have reverential fear of God. Because Catholic, although there are things that I do not particularly agree with their teachings, but when you come into the house of God, inside the church, there's something about it that makes you quiet. There's something about the solemnity of the God's temple that is there. But at the same time, that's why I'm still questioning of whether should I go back 100% or not. So this is why to each has its own journey. I am in this journey right now, trying to figure out, should I go back? I've been praying my rosary lately again because I have stopped doing that. And maybe because my grandmother's spirit, may she rest in peace, she just passed away a few months ago. And I had a vision of her. I think I was half asleep that I saw her face smiling, looking down upon me. And then she said something about, do not forget to pray your rosary. And she just disappeared. I don't know, it's an apparition. I'm not sure if it's a ghost. I don't really believe in those things. But apparently I was half asleep. I was lying on my bed. And her face, somehow, my eyes were closed. And I saw her face smiling down at me. And that's all I heard from her. Do not forget to pray your rosary. And I just saw her face very happy. And she had this demure, I feel like she was at peace with herself. And that she was just wearing this white clothing. And I opened my eyes and I just did not know, dumbfounded of what I've heard. And after that, apparently I had this urgency to go back to church. It's been in this journey again because, as I said, God is always trying to convince us to go back to him, especially when we have been falling off and we've been backsliding from him. I think this is the time to wake up. It's the time to get back right and to get things right with God, because I really believe that we're really living in the last days. I don't know when Jesus is going to come back. I don't have the date line because God doesn't give us that. Even Jesus said nobody knows when he comes back, only God the Father who knows when the time is. But at the same time, we must be alert, we must be on guard. Even if he doesn't come back today or tomorrow or in the next 5 years, Jesus said we must be alert, be vigilant, because we have an enemy. He is the devil, of the greatest foe of all time. He's always been here ever since the beginning of time. He wants us to stop serving God. He wants us to stop in our faith. He wants us to be discouraged in our faith. And I think right now, for many of us, we have been backsliding because the world has been trying so hard to pull us. The world has been trying to distract us from the things that do not really matter in this world. And so the more and more I have started to go back to my roots and to get back to my grandparents' teaching and values of being a prayerful, going to church, and then prayer rosary, I realized that those were the lessons that has been etched upon me that I could never shake, that I could never, no matter how many times I tried to ignore or forsake them, somehow it is part of me. It's like a tree that has been rooted and grounded in the ground, that no matter what the storm comes, it's still standing there. It is still standing still, and it just sways back and forth. And I truly believe that because of my upbringing, that's a reason why I'm a stronger person. I'm more resilient because of the things that was taught to me as a child. And I was thinking to myself, maybe if I was never brought up into that kind of a family, very strong in faith, have this fearing woman that I was taught, probably I would not be here today, because what else do I have that's holding me except it was God's presence, it was God's grace and wisdom and guidance. And so all I'm saying is, you're still a teenager and you think that you're invincible, you think you know it all, you think that you are actually going to get away with what you're doing now. Be careful what you do today, because you're gonna reap the consequences of that in the future. I realize that now because I am now a mother, I'm now a wife, but because if you're still in that teenager's years, you wouldn't think this way. Your mindset is still limited. You still have a lot to learn, and you still have a lot to understand of this world. And as I said, there is no such thing as a magic formula. There's no such thing as a magic wand. Every one of us has a different struggles to face. But then the question is, when you are struggling with something, who do you turn to? Where do you turn to? Do you turn to drugs? Do you turn to your friends? Do you turn to things that are just going to numb your pain in the moment? Because these things are just a crutch that most people are using to just never want to look at their problem. And if you look at the world, a lot of people are lost today. They're depressed. They're numbing their pain with substance abuse because they have no one else to turn to. And if you have no one else to turn to, you are just going to end up getting you're going to dig a deeper hell into yourself. You're actually not helping yourself in the process. So this is where I come in, as maybe you're an older sister, an older mother to you, if you're younger than I am, that you got to realize that your choices have consequences. Every action you take today will have a consequences in the future. This is why, as a teenager, if you're probably single years, enjoy being single, get to know yourself better. The greatest investment you can have is to get to know God, because He is the only source that you'll ever need. When everybody else walk away, when your friends are not there, and when you feel depressed and you feel as though no one is going to understand you better, God is always going to be there, because He is sovereign. He knows exactly what you're going through. He feels your pain, because He is a God who comforts those who are mourning. He is near to the brokenhearted. And I have walked in this path many times before, that when nobody was there, when I was going through depression, my mom was not there. My brothers and sisters were not here because they were in the Philippines. My friends did not know that I was going through all these things in my life. I knew that God was with me, because He's given me the supernatural strength and power to get on with my life. And that's what it says. We have to, C.S. Lewis said, if you look at the present state of the world, it is pretty plain that humanity has been making some big mistake. We are on the wrong road. If you are walking in the wrong path, if you are doing things that are harming you today and not contributing to your future, you got to stop and you got to turn around. You have to be a prodigal son, where he decided to wake up. If you don't know who prodigal son is, I have made a video of that many months ago. Maybe you should look at the playlist, and I don't know the title of that. But the prodigal son, to just give you a synopsis of who this prodigal son is, he was a person who decided to leave his father's house. He decided to squander rather his inheritance. So the prodigal son decided to say, Dad, I want my money now. I want my inheritance now. As if he was wishing his dad to be dead, because his dad was still alive. But this boy was very greedy. He was very selfish, that he decided to ask his dad for the part of his inheritance, because the dad was very rich. So I think that it is an illustration of being a Christian. Sometimes we think that I don't want to be a Christian anymore. I want to get out of this God nonsense. I don't want to read my Bible. I don't want to go to church. The same thing with me. I was backsliding. I went to a different route, because I wanted to recreate myself. I wanted to find myself in the world. So this boy was trying to find himself in the world, and then he squandered his wealth. He played, he gambled his money, he was prostituting himself, and then eventually the money is no longer there. There was nothing left, and there was a great famine or distress that happened in that nation, and he left with the pig's pen. He ended up eating and dining with the swine, that he realized to himself, my dad or my father is so rich, and here I am eating with the pigs. And so he dusted off his feet and he started to say, you know what, this world is not for me. For many of us, we think that the world gives us something that we desire, but when you really look back and when you really look closer, the world doesn't offer you anything but lies and deception. The world doesn't offer you peace. Jesus said, peace I live with you, not that the world gives you peace, but the peace that surpasses all understanding. So this is why sometimes we get lost in our track, because we think the world offers us better life, it offers us better happiness, it offers us better satisfaction, when in fact the world is really full of it. It's all materialism, it's all about consumerism, it's all about shallow superficiality happiness. It's actually not rooted and grounded in reality. It's not rooted and grounded in the substance of being real, tangible things that makes your soul happy and satiated. That's why Jesus said, I am the living water, and if you come to me, you will no longer thirst. If you come to me, you will no longer hunger. He's talking about the spiritual things of this world, because the world is gonna make you think that you need all of these things to be happy. That's the world tactics. And do you know who is the ruler of the world? It's Satan himself. Satan wants you to believe that if you're just going to change the appearance, Glenna, like I used to, if you change the color of your hair to black into red, if you change your plucking your eyebrow, if you're going to dress a certain way. Moving on. So I would like to give you, before I get disconnected, the verse that is actually related to this. It says in Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verses 9 through 10. Rejoice, O young man or woman, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart, and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these, God will bring you into judgment. Therefore, remove sorrow from your heart, put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. So, seek God in early life. Nothing is in vain when you seek God early. You got to start early. But it says here that, yes, you may do so. Cheer on, carry on, do whatever you please while you're young. Because here's the thing that I've learned in life. We are never taught as a young child to concentrate, to make money, to be wise. Nobody told us that. Not even my own family. I mean, although they live by example, they told us to go to get your good grades. You know, you have to have good grades, you have to go to school, you have to have a job, all these things. But then nobody really told us to stop wasting our life with partying. Nobody told us to stop, you know, making your money and then just buying things that you don't need. Because it's exactly what Ecclesiastes, King Solomon, who wrote this, he said, go right ahead, do whatever you please as a young child, as a youth, as a teenager, but at the same time, God is going to bring it into judgment. As I said, you reap what you sow eventually in life. I wish the things that I know now are the things that I know before. I could be a much better person today. But because we have it reversed, we squander our time, our energy when we're younger, because we think to ourselves, we have plenty of time to enjoy. I have plenty of time to just dabble into these worldly things. I'm just gonna take my time, wasting my life away. But then later on, when we become older, it's too late. Some of us have ruined their lives and they cannot take it back. And some of them have made bad decisions and they live in regret, and they don't really know how to start or where to start because it's too late. They get themselves involved into addictions or involved into things that they shouldn't have been involved. And that's why it says, that is why you have to know that in your youth, you might walk in your own ways and follow your own heart, but at the same time, God is going to bring it to judgment. You are going to pay for your consequences of the decisions that you have doing today. So this is why when I look back about my own life, there are things that I have regretted. There are things that I thought to myself, I wish I've never done those things. But at the same time, you cannot live in regret. You must learn to ask God for guidance on how you can start from here on, because regret is a waste of time. He wants you to start. He wants you to start fresh of asking God, give me direction, Lord, of how I should live my life now. I know it's too late perhaps for you. Maybe you think to yourself, it's probably too late for me because I'm already older. I have made a big mess out of my life. But in God's eyes, there's nothing is wasted. Nothing is wasted in God's eyes. If you just humble before the Lord and ask for His guidance, He's going to direct your path. And this is why we are told that you enjoy your life as much as you can if you want to, but at the same time, do not lose sight of the traditions and the values that your grandparents that have taught you, because these are the things that money can't buy. These are the valuable lessons that if you grow older, you're gonna say, you know what, they actually were right. They were giving me the right way and how to live. And at that time, I did not know any better. I did not appreciate it, because, you know, as a child, you think that you know it all. You think that you know better than your grandparents. But because we live in a society that makes you want to rebel, we live in society that condones being rebellious, being disobedient, because we do wrestle against blood and flesh, that we have the enemy who wants us to say, don't listen to your parents, don't listen to your grandmothers or fathers teaching, because they actually are trying to box you in, they're trying to control you. And many of us, we think that way because that's a part of life. Because when you're a teenager, as I said, you like to live your life however you want to live your life. You actually think that you can do it all, be great of everything. But actually, up here, you have nothing to prove, because you still have a lot of things to learn. And we walk around like we know everything when we're a teenager. And we don't want to be a teachable heart. As I always emphasize about my son's life, you got to learn how to have a heart who is open-minded. You got to learn all the time and take what's good and toss what's not good. And apparently the things that was brought upon my life by my grandparents or the people that were before me, those were good. Those were the things that instilled in me. That's why I am what I am today. It's because of the values that was taught upon me. I wrote in my book about my grandfather, my father figure. I did not grow up with a father, with a dad, but now that I'm learning, it was my grandfather who was my father figure, because he was a man who was a very ethical. He had a strong work ethics. He also was a God-fearing man. At the same time, he was in politics, and he was also a farmer. So he would always rise up early in the morning at the farm early in the morning. At the same time, he was involved at church, he was involved at school. He founded my high school. He was the one who actually had a high school that was built because of his tenacity, because of his vision. And that is why now I'm thinking to myself, actually the things that were traditional and conservative are actually not that bad. When it's not broken, why would you fix it? And for so many of us, we like to deteriorate, or we like to demolish things because we think that they are boring. But actually, these are the foundation, and these are the people that went before us, who sacrifice, who actually go above and beyond so that we can have this freedom and to enjoy. And because of what they have done, my grandparents' sacrifices, and that's why they were able to raise 10 children and put them in college, and that's why I am where I'm at today. And so that's why I'm saying is that if you have been backsliding away from God, and you think that the traditions and the values that were taught, that was given to you by your grandparents, were actually useless, or they're nonsensical, or they're whimsical to you now, actually I've been really humbled by them. I've been really trying to thank God. I've been really trying to walk away from all the things that was taught to me. But in fact, they were the good ones. They were the things that God would say you need to treasure and value, those things that you were taught, because without those lessons and without those teachings, you wouldn't be here today. And sometimes we need to get lost in our way so that we can find our way back home. The same thing with the prodigal son. He lost his way, but then he realized, I need to get my act together. I need to dust off my feet, apologize to my father. And that's exactly what happened. He humbled himself before the Lord, because we need to have humility. Here's the thing. God cannot teach you unless you are humble. God cannot teach you unless you have a humility and a teachable spirit. God said, I resist the proud and I give grace to the humble. The only reason for you to change is when you humble yourself before the Lord. But if you're egoistic, you're prideful, and you think, nothing's wrong with me, and I'm a very perfect person, God cannot help you. God cannot help you because you think you know it all, and you think you're a very self-righteous person. God hates prideful, egoistic, narcissistic people. He can't stand them. And this is why if you humble before the Lord, He is going to start changing something in your heart. He's going to change something in your life, because then He has something to work with. But if you are too prideful to admit that you have an issue, if you're too prideful to admit that you have a problem and I need Jesus in my life, then He can't really help you. It's like you have a disease and you have a chronic problem and you don't go to the doctor and you said, I'm actually better now, even though you're not, the doctor cannot give you something that can help you solve your chronic problem. The same thing with God. He cannot help you until you humble yourself before the Lord. And that is all, my beautiful friends, that I would like for you to think about, is that be wise, be bold, be strong, and be courageous, and keep your faith, because we do live in these last days. I feel as though God is waking up people to say, get your act together, because the time is coming that we're gonna judge and give an accountable to God. Every actions that we have done in the past, in the present time, when He comes back, or the day that we die, we're gonna give account to everything that we have done in the secret, in the public eye, the things that we have spoken. That's why we have to repent of our sins. We have to ask God's forgiveness. We have to ask Him to change us from the inside out, because the world is want to change you from the outside. Because you know what happens is that the thing that made me want to do this video is because I was watching this girl who has a video. She started singing. I'm not gonna name names but in her video, she's a musician, and she was really dressing up very conservative. She was always dressed up for conservative. She had a long hair. And then suddenly, when, I'm not saying just because, you know, she's a bad person, I'm not saying that. It's the question in my head, which one is you? The one that was before, or the one that was becoming liberal? And so what happens with this woman is that when her channel, I'm not saying that that's the reason why she cut off her hair and then she dressed up, you know, seductively, and she started dressing up differently. And people thought that she's on drugs, and people thought that something is wrong up here, because suddenly her channel, from conservative, traditional woman, dressed up, very genuine, innocent looking woman, into this different kind of woman, like the switch. Suddenly she flipped the switch. And now she's becoming rock and roll. And as what she said, as a musician, she likes to evolve and she likes to change. So this is why the question is, which one is her? Before or the after? That's what I said. Which one is me? The traditional before me, or now? I mean, not now, because now I'm going back to being traditional. Or was it me, the teenager? So that is the question. And that is the question that boggles my mind. Which one is you? Because when you think about it, there are only two: either traditional or non-traditional, liberal or conservative. There's really no middle when you think about it. So for me, I can relate to what she's saying, because she's saying to herself, I'm becoming who I am. But is she really becoming who she is, or is she being influenced by the things that she sees in Hollywood? Maybe she is being influenced by the people around her. So that is what my question is. Which one is you? Traditional or non-traditional? Liberal or conservative? Because there are only two paths here. And that's what I said. When I was a teenager, a lot of people are trying to change me. They want me to be liberal. They want me to dress a certain way. They want me to speak a certain way. And because we think that this is who we are, that when we really look back, actually, that wasn't who I am. It was the influence of the people and the world that around me, who would like to taint my real identity, who would like to change my true essence. And when I realized that, that is when it all clicked. Because we do have a people in this world who wants to taint your innocence, who wants to touch you and change you for someone that you are not, who wants to make you vulgar, who wants to make you provocative, who wants to make you seductive. For the sake of what? For the sake of their agenda. And this is why for many children and for many teenagers, we're being used to sexualize everything, because it is money. It is something that they want you to become. They want to rob your innocence. They want to make you as an object instead of a human being. When I realized this, no wonder why people who comes into this country, they become so liberal. They think that I am becoming me. It's being authentic. when in reality, they're actually to eliminate whatever your grandparents have taught you the right way. They're trying to change that. They're trying to erase that part of you. And we think that, no, this is actually who I am. Seductive, provocative, you know, sleeping around, doing these things. I'm not saying that she's doing that. All I'm saying is that when I realized that was happening in my life, everything now is making all sense. Because now, when I look back, those things of me, like cursing, doing things that are not good, there's actually not who I am. It wasn't who I am. Dressing up to just show my skin or to be vulgar, that wasn't who I am. Those were the things that I thought were trying to be different. I thought I was trying to be cool, but actually in reality, those were the lies of the people around me, because they want to sexualize me. They had a different agenda in mind. So be careful that when you think that you are being authentic to be someone else that you're not, you ask yourself the question, does this feel good? Does it sit well with me? If it doesn't feel good in the inside, you will know this. You will know if you feel good about it or not. If it doesn't sit well with you, if you don't feel good about it, if you have no peace, if you don't feel happy about it, why would you do it? If you're only doing things because people are making you do it, you're being forced to do it, or you are being pressured by the peer pressure, then don't do it. I was doing it because I was trying to fit in. Because as a teenager, you like to fit in, you like to belong to a specific group, you don't want to be outcasted. But when you grow older, you learn this the hard way, that it doesn't really matter. You don't need to belong to someone. As long as you have a relationship with Christ, as long as you know who God is, that is all that matters to you. The real people are going to come to you anyway. You don't want fake people, because mostly when you're a teenager, you don't really have real friends. Some friends of yours that you call friends are not really real. They're not going to be there for you when you have hardships. No one's going to be there for you when you're going through some kind of problem, financial problem. No one is going to be there for you except God himself, who's going to give you the pathway and lead you the right path. So this is what I'm saying, is that get to know who God is. And while doing so, you are going to find out who you are. And do not allow society, the world, social media to contaminate and to pollute your brain, to making you believe that what you have learned from the past is absolutely, you know, ridiculous, or your family is trying to control you in a way, but actually they're trying to protect you. The things that were taught to us is trying to protect us. They are not trying to constrict us. They're trying to protect us so that we can make better